Next, let's talk about workplace friendships. Our friendships within the workplace are really interesting because these relationships can range from someone that you say hello to on a daily basis without even knowing their name, to an acquaintance in another department, to a best friend that you go on vacations with. And there are a number of factors that play a role in determining our relationships within the workplace because we don't become friends with all of our coworkers. These factors are similar to the factors that determine our relationships outside of the workplace. They include things such as proximity, perceived similarities, and self-disclosure. All of these play important roles in determining those relationships. For example, proximity plays a role because you are much more likely to become friends with someone who has the desk next to yours or someone within your department than you are to become best friends with someone who works in another department that you don't see all the time or that you don't talk to very frequently. Additionally, if we perceive that we have similarities between ourselves, we are much more likely to become friends with our coworkers. And self-disclosure also plays an important role in workplace relationship formation. We might end up breaking down our friend groups within the workplace into subgroups based on things like department and age, whether or not we have a long-term romantic partner, whether we have children. All of those things play a role in who becomes friends with whom. And within the workplace, we often form peer coworker relationships. A peer coworker relationship refers to a workplace relationship between two people who have no formal authority over one another and are interdependent in some way. And we can have a number of different types of peer coworkers. The first of these are information peers. Information peers tend to communicate about work-related topics only, and there's a low level of self-disclosure and trust between information peers. This is the most superficial of the peer coworker relationships, but that doesn't mean that they are worthless. The information exchange that happens between information peers is a really important part of workplace relationships, and it really helps us to get through the day-to-day functioning of our jobs. I have a number of colleagues that I would consider to be information peers because we share an office, we see each other fairly frequently, and when we do see each other, we really only ever talk about work. We only talk about what's happening in administration or something that happened in our classroom with a student and things like that. And the conversation never really goes outside of those topics. But I value those relationships a lot because we get to commiserate with one another and to exchange that information and learn that we are not alone in these things. In addition, we might have collegial peers. Collegial peers engage in more self-disclosure about work as well as personal topics, and they tend to communicate a lot more emotional support for one another. So collegial peers are providing informal feedback for each other through their daily conversations that help employees to develop a professional identity, but also that help to support them emotionally within the workplace. So as we're going down this list, we're getting a deeper and deeper type of relationship, right? So information peers, very superficial, very surface level. Collegial peers, we're getting a little bit more of that personal element, a little bit more emotional support. And then with special peers, we have high levels of self-disclosure. So this is like a best friend within the workplace. There are very few limitations about what you can talk about with special peers. Special peers tend to be highly interdependent on one another. They provide emotional and professional support to one another on a frequent basis. And these special peers often mirror the intimate relationships that we might have with a partner or a sibling or a parent. And elements of friendship develop between these special peers. You might hang out with them outside of work, for example, and, go over to each other's houses on the weekends and things like that. And these relationships are also really important. All of these different peer coworker relationships are important to our overall well-being within our workplace. And as I was saying earlier, the interesting thing about workplace friendships is that we choose who our friends at work will be. And coworker relationships move from being strangers to friends, much like other friendships. And these friendships between peer coworkers have a ton of benefits. They make the workplace more intrinsically rewarding, they help us to manage job-related stress, and they help to reduce employee turnover simply because it creates a more positive workplace environment. And we can actually become more productive at work simply knowing that we have a support structure there. So as you can see, these workplace relationships, whether they are superficial and we just say hello to them, or whether they are like our best friends, all of these different workplace relationships are really important to the overall climate of our workplaces.